settled. Okay, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming to it. Thanks so much for inviting me. I think the plan is I'll play this piece first. As a piece for I made a few years ago. It's called When the World Was Small. It's kind of quiet, but it's kind of more in the ambient direction, so hopefully we'll find it kind of pleasant. It's about 15 minutes or so. And I can talk a little bit about it and just like my sort of practice stuff in general. If there's questions, I'm happy to take them. We could just have like a free-flowing conversation about whatever is pertinent or interesting. And then I'll play the second piece, which is called Ground. It's also around the same like 15 or 20 minutes or so, and then we'll be done. So thank you. And this piece is in like 4 short movements, so there's some breaks, but I'll make it clear what I'm done. So this piece, I wrote it in 2022. The story's kind of funny. So it was like, I was living in Santa Clarita at the time, which is of course about like, on average, 10 to 15 degrees hotter than like every other place in LA, you know? So it was in the middle of the summer and I had a microphone in my bedroom. It was in the middle of a really, really, really bad heat wave. So I just like, me being the person I am, I didn't want to go outside. I was like, I'm not going outside, you know, for a few days. You know, it's like 115 degrees or something like that. I was just like, I'm not gonna do this. I had the microphone in my room and I never really had a big percussion instrument at home before like that. So I just kind of started noodling around on it. But, you know, I lived in this apartment building with really thin walls, so I didn't want to make sounds that were too loud, or I didn't want to play too aggressively, or I just want to like disturb anybody, right? So I just kind of started experimenting with like, what are some sounds that are like really, really, really kind of quiet and small, because that was sort of reflecting like how I was experiencing the world at the time. Everything was just kind of like isolated and very tiny. So I kind of realized, so this piece is actually longer than I just played. It's 7 movements, but I only played 4 of them. Because some of the other movements are actually so quiet that like you would barely be able to hear them from where you're sitting, unless I amplified them really closely. But the idea behind it was like, how many different kinds of implements can I use? And by that I mean, you know, sticks or mallets or bows or different objects that like might sonify the instrument in different ways. How many like different implements can I use to make interesting sounds that have not really been extracted from this instrument before, right? Because the vibraphone was kind of created to be played kind of really loud in a jazz context, right? You know, it's interesting. The vibraphone was not really made by musicians; it was made by a manufacturing company originally. So and I love the sound, you know, and I love jazz vibraphone playing. I'm just not very good at it, so I kind of had to find my way into this instrument, in this world a little bit. So the Super Ball is an example, right? And this is, you know, if any of you have seen like any other like weird percussion performances, like this is a pretty standard thing nowadays, right? But this is just like a bouncy ball that's been like jammed into the end of a nail file. So usually it's used on drums or, you know, membranes or other like skin instruments like that. But I kind of figured out that if you scrape it vertically along the vibraphone bars, it makes this really beautiful, very soft, but kind of like a very subtle, kind of undulating, like slight glissando sound. So it's things like that I was kind of interested in with this piece. Along the lines of like the history of extended techniques, if you guys have learned about that before, you know, it's like history in like contemporary classical music that kind of goes back to like the 40s and 50s and things like that. You know, just the idea that how do we treat these instruments in different ways, other than the ways they were designed to be played. So percussion, because percussion kind of enters the fray in the Western world in like the early 20th century, you know, the first percussion ensemble pieces started popping up around the 30s and 40s or so. Like percussion actually was always sort of an avant-garde experimental instrument, right? It didn't have this like long trajectory, at least in the Western world, as this like as like a standard performance practice, right? Just like kind of the history of cinema, right? Like cinema and percussion sort of started at the same time, and they started like a very experimental avant-garde place, and then become standardized kind of later throughout the decades. So I guess like in general, this is like a long-winded way of saying just like I want to honor that, the avant-garde history, but not just like for the sake of being experimental and weird, like for the sake of like actually finding new sounds that are like interesting and complicated and beautiful in a way. Yeah, so that's my spiel about that. Does anyone have any questions about that piece or just about anything in general? Yeah.
How do you get like?
Wait, I know.
I know you worked that hard.
Yeah, I did. How are you? Good. Thanks. Nice to see you.
Okay, wait till next time.
Yeah.
How was like there was like moving like under the microphone? Oh yeah, I noticed.
Yeah. So microphones that are really nice, like this one. This is a great instrument. They come with this motor, so it's an electric thing. You can come up on stage and look at it afterwards if there's time, but under both of the sets of bars on the vibraphone, there's these metal resonator tubes, right? Just like an 8-mallet instrument, like marimba or xylophone or whatever. So the tubes extend downwards, so the sound goes from the bar through the tube, and that's what actually amplifies the pitch of the bar, right? If we took these tubes out, it would be very quiet. So every vibraphone has these metal flaps right under the bars that are like placed inside the resonator tubes. And if you turn the motor on, it spins the flaps at a rate that is controllable, right? So motor off, vibraphone sounds like this, right? So the air is just going straight through the tube. And then if I turn it on, then I can control the speed. And this was the thing that was designed to do, to kind of like mimic a vibrato effect in like string or horn playing or singing, right? It's not quite the same as vibrato, right? Vibrato is like a pitch modulation, and this is something a little bit different. It's like, you might call it amplitude modulation, right? Because it's not actually changing the pitch of the bar, it's just changing at a periodic rate the amount of air that is like able to go through the resonator tube. So it's just basically like the volume or the amplitude is just kind of like rapidly going up and down, but it gives it like a sort of vibrato kind of effect.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
I've got a couple. So what's the difference between the original I'm assuming microphone is as loud as yours.
Yeah, and it's also the material of the bar. So vibraphone's a metal. Like this is actually not a standard look for vibraphones. Usually they're either silver or gold, but these are metal. It's usually like a, I can't remember the metal. Kevin, do you know off the top of your head? It's not steel.
Aluminum there.
Yeah.
It's one of the.
It's like an alloy or something, right? It's like a blended, whereas marimba is much larger of a register. It spans a normal, like a full-size marimba is 5 octaves. Vibraphone's only 3 octaves. And marimba bars are made of wood. So the really nice ones are made of rosewood, or other kinds of wood can be used. And then the xylophone is really similar to the marimba. It's also made of wood, but the bars are thinner and denser this way, and then the resonator tubes are not nearly as long, so the sound of a xylophone is a lot drier than a marimba. It doesn't really resonate. And it also, like, the range of it is higher.
Do you find that playing the mallets translates to playing drums? The question seems very well.
Well, that's an interesting question. So he asked if playing the mallet instrument translates to playing drums. I mean, there's parts of it that are similar, you know. I think on like a technique level, you know, like as a percussionist, you try to make every instrument sound really good, try to get like the purest possible tone out of them, so that, you know, the principles are like, you don't grip the stick too hard, you don't hit it too hard, right? You want like the mallet or the stick that you're using to kind of do all the work, and that makes the instrument like resonate to its fullest potential. So that part is kind of the same, but like the techniques of the two are a little bit different. And playing mallets, I'll say this, I started kind of as a drummer. So then switching to mallets when I was like kind of late in life, I was like in college. When I actually started learning, it was way harder just because the dexterity is a lot more specific, right? Like you're not aiming for like broad general zones of a drum, which is a kind of big instrument. You have to hit like a really, really precise spot on the bars. So that part of it is different. But there are parts of playing percussion that are very similar, and there are parts that are different, you know. And that's what makes the instrument so interesting, is because we like have to do so many things, right? We're asked to play so many things. So there's an element of it that is kind of not disconcerting, I can't think of the word, disorienting kind of, right? Because there's no like central object with which we all like identify, right? You know, any day I could be playing drums or vibraphone or timpani or tambourine or whatever, and all these things kind of require different trainings and like different sort of technical vocabularies. But that's also what makes it cool, right? Is that like it's infinite, you know. You have questions? Yeah.
As a composer, what drew you to empty?
That's a good question. I think I'm an anxious person. And I think that at a certain point I really wanted my like musical practice to be kind of I mean, this might be a simple answer, I don't know, but I think I wanted my music to feel like kind of soothing, you know. But also, I think like conceptually, ambient music is kind of interesting. Apart from like the fact that it's like pleasant, and soothing, and beautiful to listen to, right? But just the idea that you can take a really, really simple sound, whether it's one chord or one note or one interval or something, and you think you understand what that thing is, right? Because you've heard it so many times before. You've heard a major chord a million times in your life, right? But if you force yourself to listen to it for several minutes, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, an hour, right? You start to notice things in it that you didn't before, right? So there's this kind of, I think what interests me conceptually about ambient music is there's this kind of like infinity in like very, very simple sounds. I'm thinking today about this composer Leveque, who just died yesterday. So she's been on my mind. She's this French composer, like made electroacoustic music, and then later in life sort of transitioned to mostly like acoustic concert music. But she writes a lot about like the meditative qualities of durational long pieces like this, and this one isn't even that long. But that's something I think about, you know, and that's like a thing that goes all the way back to like Eric Satie, you know, if you guys know his music, right? The idea that it could be you could be on in the background, and you might not be paying full attention to it, but if you do kind of check out and check back in, like it's very transformative. Even if the sound hasn't changed, you have kind of changed, like your psychology has changed. So there's just something about, I don't know, this is like a around the world in 80 days answer, but there's something about like the transformative quality of listening to sounds, even when they themselves don't change, right? Okay, I guess I'll do the next one. So this one, okay, I'm gonna do a short version of this because we're running out of time. This piece is called Ground. I made this a few years ago. This one's gonna be a little gnarlier, I think. So hopefully that's cool. I think that like the idea with this one was to kind of make a piece for a snare drum and also like a bunch of objects. Like this is a ceramic tile, this is a Tibetan singing bowl. And a similar approach where I'm kind of using implements in different ways to kind of pull different sounds out of the instrument that you might not have like known were there already. But I think the real thing I was trying to get after with this piece is that, you know, we're kind of conditioned to think that percussion is just this kind of like vertical physicality thing, in which the mechanism of the instrument requires you to only really be in contact with it like for a split second, and then you're not touching it anymore, right? But there's this whole world of percussion sounds that are like horizontal and things like that. So I found it a kind of grounding thing to be like constantly in physical contact with the instrument. So that's what the piece is kind of getting after. It's like a catalog of sort of continuous sounds, which is not like a normal thing in a percussion lexicon, if you will. Okay. Just gonna time this, because I think we have to get out of here quick. So usually they're wood. I don't know. I didn't come up with this. I wish I did. I was at a festival 2 years ago, and someone had one of these, and he was like, "Do you know you can do this?" And I was like, "No, of course I didn't." It's like, how would I know that? You know? Yeah, but I'm pretty psyched. It's hard to do it. Like you have to be super perpendicular on it, but yeah, it was a cool discovery. Yeah.
Sorry, one more time. Okay. Have you made any of your own like tools or anything to get stuff that's in there?
Yeah, not really. I'm not very handy. I did make this. This is just like a huge needle with like plumbing rings on it. I had to make it for like a woodblock piece, or the Lisa Lynn woodblock piece. Other than that, no. I think I'm not very good at inventor, but I'd like to more in the future for sure. Anything else? Yes.
Do you notate or chart your music?
This the vibrant piece is, just because I wanted to remember it, right? But the score is less like, it's not like totally through composed, it's more just like a shorthand notation of like what the pitch collections are for each movement that are available, just so I can kind of jog my memory a little bit. But the snare drum one isn't. And a lot of my pieces I don't notate because other people don't play them. You know, that's not, I'm more of a performer composer-y kind of person. I don't like give these pieces to other people, although I would, you know, if someone asked. But a lot of the time they just are over my mind because I started as an